Hi guys, welcome back to Codemaster Coach, your medical coding tutor. Okay, you can't wait. You want the answers to quiz 1. And I understand. So, if you have not yet viewed my video on quiz 1, where I give 5 coding scenarios for you to answer, go back and stop this video, go back and view that video first. Answer the questions, because this video is the answers. Okay, let's get started. Our first question is, a patient is admitted with fever and severe headache. The diagnostic workup reveals viral meningitis. She also has asthma with acute exacerbation and hypertension, both of which are treated. Okay guys, so the key here is your patient is admitted, it says with fever and severe headache, the diagnostic workup revealed. So that fever and headache revealed viral meningitis. So in that, all of that wording, the only thing you code is viral meningitis. So if you look up meningitis, viral, it will give you code A87.9. It also says she also has asthma with acute exacerbation and hypertension, and the key here, it says both of which are treated. Because they're treated, we code. So if I code asthma with acute exacerbation, I get J45901, and for hypertension, I get I10. All right, so how did we do on number 1? The answers. A87.9, J45901, and I10. Okay, good. Number 2. A female, 68 years old, was admitted with type 2 diabetes mellitus with a diabetic ulcer of the left heel. Okay, so your patient has diabetes, and because of that diabetes, they have an ulcer of their left heel. Well, if you go to ulcer, and because your patient is diabetic, you always identify that, it will tell you to look up diabetes ulcer. So if I go to diabetes ulcer, and in this case, because of the heel, it leads me to foot, I get E11.621 because heel is considered foot. But also, there is a note that tells me to use an additional code to identify the site of the ulcer, and to use it gave me categories L97.4 through L97.5. So when I went back and looked up ulcer, foot, or heel, it told me see lower limb. Let me walk you through this one, because this one got tricky. Let's pull out our code books. Let's go to ulcer. Make sure I got enough lighting here. And I tried to tab it to make it easier for us to get to quicker. But if I go to ulcer, diabetic, see how it's telling me to see diabetes ulcer. You see that? So it's telling me C, and diabetes is in a capital letter, which lets me know that is the main term, and then subterm ulcer. So let's do that real quick. If I go to diabetes, ulcer, main term diabetes, and if I go to ulcer, there goes foot ulcer. It gives me E11621. I'm under main term, diabetes. And right up under there, you'll see foot ulcer, E11621. So when I go to E11, type 2 diabetes with foot ulcer, it says use additional code to identify the site of the ulcer. So you see that? So if I want to identify the site of the ulcer, it already tells me it's between categories L97-4 and L97-5. But to be, you know me, I have to teach this correctly. I need to go to main term ulcer and identify the fact that it is an ulcer and we've already looked up diabetes, so I need to do ulcer, heel. But heel says see ulcer lower limb. See that? So when I go to ulcer, when I look up heel, see the subterm heel, see ulcer lower limb. So then I need to turn and look up ulcer lower limb. And lower limb okay. Lower limb breaks it down to even identifying where on the lower limb. So I need to find foot. It's hard to hold this camera because what I'm seeing, there's heel at the bottom of the page. So I need to go back up top. Lower limb, left. Okay. We were at heel on the previous row. Heel. L97-4. But I need to identify that it is of the left heel. So it's still under lower limb, but it's left. L97-429. Okay? So that's how we identify this number 2, female, 68 years old, admitted with type 2 diabetes, mellitus with diabetic ulcer of the left heel. So it takes 2 codes, E11621 and L97-429. Okay. Number 3, 57-year-old man is admitted with acute dehydration secondary to nausea and vomiting that is due to acute gastroenteritis. He is treated for dehydration. So let's go back and look at this. Let's analyze this. A 67-year-old man is admitted with acute dehydration secondary to nausea and vomiting. So this patient started throwing up. He had nausea and vomiting. He threw up so much that he became dehydrated. But that nausea and vomiting is due to the acute gastroenteritis. So it says here, he is treated for dehydration. So dehydration should be coded first. And dehydration is E86.0. But it also, we need to identify the fact that they are nausea and vomiting due to acute gastroenteritis. So we need to identify the acute gastroenteritis, which is K52.9. Now it says nausea and vomiting, but that is due to. So again, when it's due to and it identifies what it's due to, we don't code signs and symptoms when they lead to a definitive diagnosis. Remember in my UHDDS guidelines video, when you have signs and symptoms that lead to a definitive diagnosis, you code that definitive diagnosis. So had I coded nausea, vomiting, and gastroenteritis, I would be double coding. But because that nausea and that vomiting is due to acute gastroenteritis, then all I code is the gastroenteritis. So to appropriately code this scenario with a 67-year-old man that is admitted with acute dehydration, Then that acute dehydration is first, E86.0. It says the dehydration is secondary to nausea and vomiting. That is due to acute gastroenteritis. He is treated for the dehydration. Guys, only need two codes here: dehydration and acute gastroenteritis. E86.0, K52.9. All right, number 4. Patient was found at home in a hypoglycemic coma. The patient had never been diagnosed as being diabetic. So in this case, just go under hypoglycemic and coma. One code, E15. E15. This patient is not diabetic, so you would not go under diabetes. You just go under hypoglycemic and subterm coma. And number 5, a patient is admitted with severe malnutrition. That's all it states. Now for medical purposes, we have to be careful with that malnutrition code, but for purposes of teaching, if I just looked up malnutrition and then looked up the subterm, in this case it says it's severe, it gives me E43. E43. Okay, guys? So your answers: number 1, A87.9, J45.901, and I10. Number 2, E11.621 and L97.429. Number 3, E86.0 and K52.9. Number 4, E15. And number 5, E43. Okay, guys, this was the first. On Tuesday, I'll upload quiz number 2. Be ready.